Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Million Dollar Chicken. That's right, I'm doing my take on the Standard Grill's famous $1 Million Chicken recipe. And did it taste like $1 million? Possibly, but we'll get into that. And what really caught my eye with this recipe was two things. One, it is slathered in a creme fraiche glaze. You know we got to think for creme fraiche around here. And also it's roasted on thick slices of bread, which soak up all the juices and get caramelized and crusty. So just based on those two things alone, I was like, hey, this is worth a try. All right. So we're going to start with one big roasting chicken. This is about 4.5 pounds. It's a big one. And we're going to generously season the inside with salt and pepper, also the back. And then we're going to take a lemon, cut it in half, squeeze the juice into the cavity along with the lemon itself. I'm also going to cram in a whole bunch of thyme and one bay leaf. And internally speaking, that chicken is prepped. Next up, we're going to prep the roasting pan with a little bit of olive oil at the bottom. And then we're going to take 3 thick slices of day-old French bread. We're going to lay that down. I'm going to drizzle a little more olive oil over the top. And then our chicken is going to get placed right on top of that. And then I want you to take a little bit of butcher string and tie the legs together. And while you watch me do that, I'm going to point out 2 things that I did differently from the original recipe. I used 3 slices of bread instead of 2, so my bread was sticking out from the outside of the chicken. And I also used a big wide roasting pan instead of a smaller pan that just barely fit the chicken and bread. So I wanted to point that out, but we're not going to discuss that until later. I know, that should hold you. Okay, once the chicken's trussed, we're going to brush it lightly with olive oil. And then we're going to salt it very generously all over, including the sides and any nooks, crannies, and or crevices. And once that is seasoned, we're going to put that in a preheated 450-degree oven for 1 hour. And while that roasts, we're going to go ahead and make the creme fraiche glaze. So I have 1 cup of creme fraiche, to which we're going to add some shallot, but we're not going to mince it, we're not going to dice it, we're going to grate it. That's right, this is literally great news. So we're going to peel our shallot, we're going to rub it on the microplane, and we're going to get basically a shallot puree. All right, so I did that till I had about a tablespoon. And then to that, we're going to add one of my new favorite ingredients, Aleppo pepper. A truly delicious, slightly hot, very fruity, beautiful chili pepper, which I always thought was from Syria, but someone told me it's from Turkey. And I'm really not sure why I'm stirring this, because we still have to put in some lemon zest and some lemon juice, and then you can give it a stir. All right, so mix that thoroughly. So what's going to happen here, when that chicken comes out, we're going to glaze it with this creme fraiche a couple times to finish it off. So go ahead and pop that in the fridge until needed. And then all we need to do is wait for that hour roasting time to finish, after which your chicken should look something remarkably similar to this. Oh yeah, that's looking pretty good. Now before we glaze it, I wanted to take the chicken off of the bread and flip those over. And as I started to do that, I realized, oh my God, I totally ruined it. By using that extra piece of bread and using the wide roasting pan instead of the smaller pan, my bread obviously had gotten too dark. Now, huge spoiler alert here, it turned out not to be a problem, but at this point I thought it was going to be a problem, so I was kind of upset. But I decided to soldier on, and I flipped that bread over, placed the chicken back on top, and then we're going to give it the first of 2 applications of our creme fraiche glaze. And yes, as soon as creme fraiche hits something hot, it turns back into something that's basically the consistency of cream. So don't let that throw you, just brush it all over. And when I say brush it on generously, I'm talking like over the top generous. Or if someone's watching you do this, it should be a little bit awkward. That's how much I want you to put on. You totally want it dripping down onto that bread, trust me. And once that had a generous coating brushed on, we're going to put that back into the oven, still at 450 degrees, for 10 minutes to glaze it, okay? And in 10 minutes later, it looked like this. That is getting really sexy. And then we're going to do that one more time. Take your brush on that creme fraiche, again, very generously. And you can see there's copious amounts dripping down into that already saturated with chicken drippings bread. I think this is one of those recipes where more isn't less, more is more. So I really drenched mine. And then that's going to go back in for another 10-minute glazing, at which time your chicken should be perfectly cooked and looking just spectacular. At this point, we're going to let that chicken rest for about 10 minutes. But instead of just standing there staring at those glistening breasts, we're going to go ahead and do one optional step, which is to pour any of the remaining creme fraiche glaze, which you should have about 1/3 to 1/2 left. We're going to put that in a saute pan over medium heat, and just like cream, you can reduce creme fraiche slightly. It will thicken up a little bit. I was mainly wanting to cook out the raw taste of the shallot, so I just boiled mine for a minute and turned it off, and we'll just drizzle that on the chicken after we slice it. It's going to be awesome. So I'm going to turn off the heat and just set that aside, and it's back over to the chicken. And at this point, I had to test the bread. I was like, oh no, it's way too dark to use. This is going to taste disgusting. And yet, it didn't. It tasted so amazing. I was so excited and relieved. So I moved the chicken to a cutting board. I grabbed an even darker piece to give it a second test. I thought maybe the first one, it was just the beer talking. But no, even though it was almost black, it was so incredibly delicious, it was hard to describe. So what I originally thought I might have to throw away ended up being my favorite part of the dish. So I'm going to serve that underneath the chicken just like you would a stuffing or dressing. I cut up my chicken, placed it over the top, drizzled over a little bit of that hot creme fraiche glaze. I also decided to go full foodie and sprinkle over a few chive blossoms. Oh, you can't buy those, but if you grow chives, those just happen naturally. And you can pinch those off, sprinkle them on stuff, and it tastes just like chive. Very cool. And there you go. That looks like, yes, $1 million. So I will give the appearance a $1 million rating. But what about the taste? If you're just judging the chicken, it's a really, really good roasted chicken recipe. But I wouldn't say just the chicken alone is $1 million. But when you combine the chicken with that bread, when you combine that sticky creme fraiche and chicken fat dripping soaked bread with the roasted meat, then you're talking at least $1 million taste. And by the way, I served these with some slow cooked green beans. They may not look like much, but they came out unbelievably delicious. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, there you go, $1 million chicken. Despite the couple things I did differently, I thought it came out incredibly well. And as they might say in the world of international finance, the flavors were too big to fail. So I really do hope you give that a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.